All right, let's talk about GPU spec sheets. You know, that giant wall of numbers and letters that feels totally impossible to understand? Well, we're going to crack that code. And by the end of this, you'll know exactly which of those numbers actually matter for you. Okay, so picture this. You're trying to buy a new graphics card. You're looking at the box and you're just hit with this barrage of terms, right? T-flops, gigabytes per second, gigatexels per second. I mean, what does it all mean? It honestly feels like you need an engineering degree just to figure out what's good for gaming versus what's for, say, AI. It's a lot, and it can be super overwhelming. Well, here's the best way to think about it. It's all just one big puzzle. Each of those crazy numbers, that's just a single piece. And yeah, on its own, a piece doesn't tell you much. But once you know how they all fit together, oh man, the whole picture of what a GPU can really do just snaps into focus. It becomes crystal clear. And that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to translate all that abstract spec sheet jargon into what it actually means for you in the real world. You know, whether you're trying to get the highest frame rates, edit 8-keys video, or train an AI model. Believe it or not, it really all boils down to just three core metrics. Seriously, if you can get your head around these three, you'll understand like 90% of what makes a GPU tick. So let's meet them. Okay, first up, we've got FLOPS. It stands for floating point operations per second. Sounds complicated, but all it really means is this. It's the raw, brute force mathematical power of the GPU. It's a measure of just how many calculations, you know, ones with decimal points, it can just chew through every single second. The easiest way to think about it, it's like the horsepower of a car's engine. A GPU with high flops has a bigger, beefier engine. It's just capable of doing a massive amount of work at an absolutely incredible speed. All right, so that's the engine. Next up, memory bandwidth. See, that powerful engine needs fuel, or in this case, data to work on. And that data is stored in the GPU's own dedicated memory, the VRAM. Bandwidth is all about how fast the GPU can move that data back and forth between its processing cores and that memory. So let's stick with our car analogy. If FLOPS is the engine, then memory bandwidth, that's the highway the data travels on. A super wide 8-lane highway, that's high bandwidth. It lets a ton of data flow all at once, no problem, keeping that big engine fed. But a narrow little country road, well, that's low bandwidth, and you're going to get a serious traffic jam. And finally, our third metric is fill rate. This is kind of the final step, the payoff. It's all about the output. It measures how fast the GPU can actually draw all the pixels and slap on all the textures that create the final image you see on your screen. For this one, think of a painter. A GPU with a high fill rate is like a master painter who can just cover a giant canvas with paint, getting all the intricate details down incredibly fast. And in the world of a GPU, what does that translate to? Smoother motion and, you guessed it, higher frame rates in your games. Okay, so there you have it, our three main players, FLOPS, bandwidth, and fill rate. The engine, the highway, and the painter. But here's the secret, the really key part. You don't always need all three to be maxed out. Nope. Depending on what you do, one of these is going to be way more important than the others. It becomes your GPU's chosen superpower. And this is where it gets really interesting, because the priorities can change a lot. Let's say you're a gamer. For you, fill rate is king. That's what gets you those buttery smooth high frame rates. And if you're gaming at, say, 4K, you'll also need a ton of memory bandwidth for all those giant high-res textures. But what if you're a scientist or an AI developer? The whole thing flips on its head. For you, it's all about the flops. You need that raw computational power to crunch massive data sets. Fill rate? It's practically irrelevant. You might not even be hooking up a monitor. And this really shows you what I mean about that 4K gaming challenge. Look at this. At 1080p, your need for bandwidth is, it's moderate. But the second you jump to 4K, the amount of data you're pushing just skyrockets. If you don't have enough memory bandwidth, a wide enough highway, your GPU literally starts to starve for data. And that's when you get stuttering and lag, no matter how powerful that engine is. Now, let's flip the coin and look at the impact of FLOPS. For something like machine learning, a GPU with just insane levels of FLOPS can take a process that would have taken days to run and just crush it down to a few hours. I mean, that's not just a little speed bump. That is a game-changing, revolutionary leap in what's possible. Okay, but I have to give you a really critical warning here. These three metrics, they don't work in a vacuum. They're not isolated. You have to think of them as a team. And just like any team, if one member is slow, it holds everybody else back. And in the world of computing, we have a name for that. It's called a bottleneck. And this quote, it just perfectly sums up the whole problem. A GPU with high flops but low memory bandwidth is like a genius mathematician who can only communicate via snail mail. I mean, think about it. You could have the smartest, fastest processor in the world, insane flops, but if it's just sitting there waiting for data to arrive because the bandwidth is too slow, all that incredible potential is just wasted, just waiting for the mail to show up. Because see, performance is really a chain of events. First, instructions come in from your CPU. Then the GPU's cores do the heavy lifting, the calculations, that's your flops. Then data gets moved from memory to the cores, that's your memory bandwidth. And finally, the image gets drawn on the screen, that's your fill rate. It's a sequence, and if any one of those links in the chain is weak, the entire process slows down. So yeah, your GPU is only as fast as its weakest link. But here's the real kicker. The bottleneck might not even be on the GPU itself. That's right. If you go out and buy a monster top-of-the-line graphics card, but you pair it with a really old, slow CPU, that CPU just can't feed it instructions fast enough. The GPU ends up just sitting around, waiting. Your CPU becomes the bottleneck. Okay, so for our final section, let's talk about the sneaky stuff. The things the spec sheet doesn't tell you. Because if you really want to be an expert, you have to learn how to read between the lines and see past the marketing hype. There are a few hidden traps you really need to watch out for. First off, those giant numbers on the box, they're theoretical maximums, peak performance. Your actual real-world performance is pretty much always going to be lower. Second big one, heat. If a card gets too hot, it will automatically slow itself down to keep from getting damaged. That's called thermal throttling. Third, and this is a big one, you can't always compare the flops from an NVIDIA card directly to an AMD card. Their internal architecture is just different, so it's not an apples-to-apples comparison. So what's the big takeaway here? It's simple. Always look at independent, real-world benchmarks from reviewers you trust. Don't just rely on the spec sheet. So the next time you see one of those spec sheets, are you just going to see a bunch of numbers? Or are you going to see the story that they're telling together? Because that's what it is. It's not a scorecard, it's a story about balance and purpose. You'll be able to look at it and see the engine, the highway, and the painter. You'll understand what that card was truly built to do. And then you can ask the most important question of all, is that what I need it to do?